Welcome to this week's episode of Catching Flights with Renvir. And this week we have a very special guest. It's Steve Shopley. How are you, Steve?
I'm really good, Ranveer. Thanks very much. How are you doing?
I'm really well. I'm really well. Thank you so much for making the time to come on the show. I'm really happy to have you here with me today.
Well, likewise, and it's kind of ironic or very appropriate. I was just looking at booking flights before I got on here to go back to the
Oh,
UK next week.
yeah. Okay. Well, this is not really a show about catching flights per se or the cheapest airline tickets, although maybe it can be someday. But no, here we are, we're going to talk about some very interesting things that I think, our audience is going to be very happy to hear. But before we do that, I think it's obviously very appropriate to let the audience know a little bit about you. So would you like to tell everybody a bit about yourself?
Sure, my pleasure. So my name is Steve Shopley. Obviously, I originate from the UK. Grew up in Northern England, a place, very beautiful historic country, city called York in the north. Uh, it used to be called Iberacum in the Roman days, and Jorvik in the Viking days. So a lot of history. Um, that being said, it's still very old, trapped in the past. And I got out. I found a way and was fortunate. I left that life when I was 21 and moved to the States. I had an opportunity that showed up unexpectedly, partly out of curiosity and being guided to follow something that was unusual at the time. And I lived there for almost 10 years. And that was my jump into a corporate life. So I was an apprentice engineer and low level uh, office engineer at the time, nothing spectacular. Um, but within 18 months, I had a career for a top company in Silicon Valley, supplying to the top chip manufacturers that many of the names we still know today.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time, as well as having amazing experiences, I got into my very first personal development course because it's funny now, but I suddenly had to give presentations to my technical clients in
Right.
these chip companies, and my knees would literally knock, and my voice would shake. And I went to my boss, and he
Okay.
says, "Ah, this is not good. I've got to do something about that." And anyway, he told me about a course. So that was when I really started realizing that and many other people have things they'd like to overcome. But when I stayed for about 10 years, had a great experience, but I was led. It just felt like I needed to go back and wanted to go back to the UK. Both of those trips, everyone thought I was crazy from where I was going from, but it just felt right for me and certainty. And that's one of the things I found through my life. When I get really clear on something, regardless of whatever anybody else says, and it may be counterintuitive, it feels right, that's never let me down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the inner wisdom and intelligence I found later in life and to understand. And so I went back, and after one more boss, I found who was a bad boss. I quit, and then after some time pondering what I really wanted to do, I I got clear because I'd been involved with personal development probably 4 to 6 years at that point. I wanted to help people have a better time at work and be even more effective and productive. So by work and life. And so
Mm-hmm.
that set me on the journey of how do I do it. I went on to do a degree in psychology and a master's degree. And very truncated story about that. But in that whole process, I ended up working in big corporates, well, all size companies, mid and big size, doing coaching, team and leadership development, but always with a commercial focus. So what are they not able to do that they want to do? What would they like to have be easier, take less time, less effort, less stress, those kind of things. And so that's the kind of headline when I started back in when would that be? 97 was the first time I started working in that field experientially, and then after my master's later on.
Yeah. Sounds
Yeah.
like you've had quite the journey. I can hear myself in the background there, Steve. Is the audio a bit messed up?
Not on this end. No, strangely enough. I don't know what
Okay,
that
because I
is.
can I can hear myself echoing on your side.
Hmm.
Let me try to speak again. It's better
Okay.
now. It's better
Okay.
now. I don't know what it was.
That's
Okay,
a
we can
bit of magic.
let's try that portion again. Yeah. Yeah,
Clear
luckily you got
intention
to
and it
speak.
clears
So
things up.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, no, luckily you got to speak, so we don't have to shoot your thing. But I'll just start again with what I was gonna say. So, um,
Okay.
well, yeah, that was quite a story that you've been through quite a lot of different industries, which led you to your passion of coaching, and that's actually one thing I'm kind of curious about. So, for the listeners who have been to our earlier episodes, I also spoke with Nikon Gomli, who focuses on coaching one-to-one businesses, right, and one-to-one with athletes and so on and so forth, and you're
Yeah.
on that side of coaching for B2B and corporate organizations. So I'm quite curious what a day in the life of a B2B corporate coach looks like.
Um, well, it was a mixture. What I used to do a combination of one-on-one work. So that would be
Okay.
a lot of travel around London from different companies, but I would generally wouldn't do more than 2 or 3 a day because I would generally work for about 90 minutes with clients, and then you've got the travel awaiting and everything else. Because you can't rush coaching, especially the state of mind coaching I
Hmm.
apply all right to the coaching. Because most company executives, high level at least, have got very fast minds. They're rewarded for having a smart brain and being able to come up with answers. And that eventually they get to a level where they can't get the answers. They don't know what to do or how to do it or get the results as fast
Yeah.
as they need. So they have to learn to access some different capacities. And so that was how I work with individuals. But I could be on week long, like 4 or 5 day leadership training and development programs for like a BP or something like that. I traveled all over Europe, Africa, and even one time I flew from London to Jakarta to work with electronics company over there for their top executives for 4 days, then flew back after the weekend. So
Hmm.
there's often a lot of travel involved when you're working with corporates, and but they, this was going back a while. They'd already started seeing the value of it. I mean, coaching is far more widely accepted and aware of nowadays. And but there are still limitations on budgets for that. So there are still a
Hmm.
lot of people that would like to access it and can't get it from within the companies. So that's one of the things I'm looking at the moment. But
Yeah.
one of the to work with even teams, if they've got some challenges, I would end up probably working like once a month with the team around some relevant developmental stuff that would then blend into their week of what they were doing, or could be individual and with a day or two with the whole team, or even with different teams. Because often there's some challenges between different teams, whether it's just differences at the time or some historical baggage. I've dealt with all of them, and you can get some real integration that way. Not just within a team or just individuals being better. You can get a whole part of a business or division working effectively,
Hmm.
which is really amazing with amazing results. I remember there was a senior director at BP who says this is the first example I've seen of real integration across. It was a European group at the time, so that's obviously very rewarding, and it's nice to see clients surprised. They hadn't experienced that before.
Yeah. So actually, one of the things I'm also curious to know and ask you about is why do you think people need coaching? Why is coaching important?
Well, you know, we're all perfect when we're born. We're
Yes.
born perfect, and we have a lot of capacities. And then you look at young kids. Young kids, they're very eager to learn. They're happy. They can meet anybody. They'll go up to someone that's like they've known them forever. They get upset. A couple of minutes later, they're all happy again. It's like that's how life should be lived, and we can live that way. They get a problem. Okay, they'll figure it out, all with help. So as we grow up, we all have our backgrounds. We all have things we experience or messages we've got from our parents, our families, our teachers. I had a head teacher at 11 telling my parents I would never amount to anything.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously. And that might have been on a day he was having a bad day. I don't know. But so we all have things happen, and we make stuff up about life. We make stuff up about ourselves. I joke that use the American acronym of universities, MSU. Everyone's graduated for something called university, like Minnesota State University, for an example. So MSU to me means making stuff up here that isn't real, and that it's like putting barriers in front of ourselves. Or we've tried stuff and failed and didn't like that public sense of failure. So there's very few people don't have certain things have happened. They think that is a lot of people think they can't get over it, for one. And then others don't know how to get over it. But even if they haven't anything like that, we have some deeper innate capacities that the more we ramp up our intellect, the less able we are to interact and access them. So that's our intuition, that's our innate wisdom and intelligence, which is deeper than our intellect. Two very different things. And when we understand how they integrate and how they can be kept separate, then we have access to all that. That's when we get more valuable insights on realizations and new solutions showing up. But we also get the barriers to being naturally confident, naturally creative, naturally connected and aware of what's going on, which we can't access. Our intellect shuts that gate. Now there's a way that I came across that every single human being, there's a way of explaining everything that happens to everyone in exactly the same way. Not the reasons the same, but the underlying system we have is exactly the same for everybody. So we are literally all the same, operating the same way, whether it's effective or not. We're using the same system. So it'd be like we're trying to drive a car. The car works perfect when we know how to drive it. But if we don't, or we want to be on autopilot, and right now it's best to at least keep aware of what's going on. So you need to override it a bit. So when we can function at our best, that's like peak performance, whether it's in sport or work or whatever it is, where the best, like the world champions or whatever, or the best in the world, they have access to that natural state of nothing's in the way of it. We're completely focused. We have utmost confidence. We're not thinking about and distracted about anything else, and we're in the zone, if you like, for common terminology. But that's a natural capability. When we need to learn how to get ourselves, our intellectual statement out of the way, and we are at our best self, and that is our true self with no distortions. And so it's also a place where we are naturally happy and joyful and grateful and connected and appreciative for no reason. We don't have to do anything for it. So I think, why wouldn't anybody want that? People, we're able to get more done with less time, less effort, less stress, have more satisfaction and ease with it, and go home with more energy and time and being ability to be with our partner or family and not distracted by that other stuff. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I totally agree with that actually. I think, in a lot of ways as well, like having that ability to just be in the zone should come naturally to us. But I think people lose that ability along the way somewhere, somehow, right? For whatever
Yep.
reason it may be. Or maybe not that they lose their ability, but uh they lose their ability to realize that they have that ability, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like it slips the fact that they can do it. And it's such an important thing because obviously, that get shit done mentality is only put into like the work, like what's on your to-do list today. But actually zoning in and also, being very present in the moment can also be applied to more important things that matter, like family, like listening, like being present, and engaging in what you're doing to the fullest of your ability as well. So I totally,
Yep.
I totally agree with you on that one, right? You don't want to bring your work home and, if you're having home stress or whatever, you don't want to bring that to your work. So, it's very commonsensical that way.
Yeah. Yes, things like that happen. We're human beings, so we move up and down in our states of being at our best or less than best. But once we understand now how to spot it and know how we can shift it, then we can just be present, focused, whatever we're doing, and move on. Like say, leave work at work, and be able to.
Mm-hmm.
So we get habituated to how we react to situations, both at work and at home, and that kind of stuff. And then a lot of times people hang on to that, and here we go again, or they get trapped in it. So it's helping people become far more aware, or helping them realize themselves how to spot that. And then, imagine, we have a really top class sailboat that can do
Okay.
amazing things, but we're not really taught how to sail it properly. And we kind of know, oh, I want to get across. I can see that it's just over there where I want to get, over the horizon. But if I don't know how to read the tide currents, if I don't know how to understand the weather patterns, if I don't know how to plot a chart through all that, and then I don't know how to adjust if the wind comes up or the tide changes or a storm's coming in. If I don't, the wind's picking up, if I don't know how to bring the sails down a bit so it's not going to just blow the boat over, and I don't know how to steer through all that, I may still survive, but it'd be at least a really rough ride. Whereas if I
Yes.
know how to do that really effectively, I don't have to be afraid, and it can become exhilarating and a challenge. And it may be, an exciting experience. We might get a little very wet, but in no time are we really in danger unless we're in the extreme end of that. So it's like having anything where we have to adjust in the moment and be aware of that. And even with that situation, how we take care of ourselves has an effect on that. So it all kind of comes together. But when
I think so too.
I found when I know what's going on and I know how to adjust for it, then it minimizes the damage. It's like damage limitation. Sometimes we can't shift it. Maybe I just got to eat and I've got to find food, or I really didn't sleep well last night. So I've got to trade carefully. It's not them, it's me. That kind of thing.
Yeah. So let me ask you a very interesting question then, and maybe you can rely on some of your observations and your learnings. But as someone who studied psychology, I've come to learn that the brain is a very, very, very powerful part of our body, right? If not the most powerful. So from coaching, from speaking to other people, or maybe from your own research or your own experiences, what are some of the greatest or the most surprising revelations that you've come across, or the greatest changes that you've seen just by a small shift in the way people think or the way that their brain is conditioned to do something?
Um, well, I think of it from a client. I'll talk about some stuff for myself. So I had one client who was flying a kite with his son, very successful mid-level manager and leader, very conscientious. And it was Sunday afternoon. They went flying a kite, which he used to do periodically with his son. And it's a beautiful sunny day. He was saying that, and the wind was just perfect. We're there. And then he said, halfway through he said, I suddenly found this tugging at my trousers. And my son is down between my legs. He was like 7 at the time. And he was yanking on his father's trousers, saying, Daddy, Daddy, come here, fly kite. He said, what, we're flying kite. What are you talking about? We're having a great time. No, Daddy, come here. You're not here. And he said, in that moment, what I realized was I was physically flying the kite, but I wasn't there personally. I wasn't with my son. My head was in work and I was thinking about work. So he said that's when he really got how he wasn't always present. And later on, he realized that he was the same with his people he managed and led. Because often he'd be with people, but distracted. So it looked like he was there, but he wasn't really there. And so that'd be from a client. If I take one of my early unexplainable at the time experiences, I was on my master's course, which was highly experiential, about 25 of us in a room. This was right at the end of my 2-year program. We'd have a 5-day block where we went in. And I'd driven there, no problem. Everything went okay. But when we got in the room, after a while, everyone was discussing something that we were applying and practicing. And I found I couldn't engage in the conversation. I was there. I knew what was going on. I knew who was there, what they were saying. I understood it all, but I couldn't analyze. I couldn't assess. I couldn't critique or debate. None of those intellectual faculties were available to me. And I thought, hell, I'm losing my mind, or I've lost my mind. I started to panic a bit. And I told the course leader what was going on. And I said, what's going on? He says, oh, I don't know, but just don't worry about it. And he was like a PhD Gestalt therapist as well as the course leader. So, and I respected him a lot by that point. But he said, from my experience, when these kind of things come up, they just kind of eventually will go. So don't worry about it. So I just took him on his word, fortunately. And I relaxed into this. And this went on for like 5 or 6 weeks, all the way through until the next one. And what happened in that first week, I suddenly discovered the joy and the peace and the contentment and the happiness of just being. I was still able to do everything I needed to do, still drove. Wherever I needed to go, I could be places and I could still go to the pub with my friends, but I couldn't engage in conversation. But I also got very creative. I started writing, which I'd never done before. I wouldn't say poetry, but creative prose about my experiences. And then I had a thought after a couple of weeks, what happens if my intellect never comes back? Or if it does, I don't want to lose this feeling, which was just blissful, which I'd never had before. And I only later realized that was the start of my intellect coming back in. But fast forward, that slowly came back in. I still was able to access those feelings, not knowing how to really, but they would show up. Later, what I realized, the other things I've learned, that was my first experience of and proof that we can function very well without thinking. I could drive a high-powered car. I could drive on the motorways. I knew where I was going. I remembered everything. I just couldn't critique. And my thinking, that part of my disappeared. Now, I don't know about you. I was coming into 7 years of psychological study, a degree, and then a master's. And I'd never heard that possibility from anyone. So that was neat for me. I realized that was the first proof that, hey, we don't have to think to function. And when we don't think, these other amazing feelings, gifts are there naturally. I did nothing. They just showed up. So, and creativity showed up as well. New ideas showed up. So that was the first glimpse for me that, hey, intellect isn't everything. There's a great quote from Einstein. He said, it's something like what is it? The intuitive, he says something like the intuitive mind is a sacred gift. And the intellect is a faithful servant. So the intuitive mind is a divine gift, and the intellect is a faithful servant. And unfortunately, society reveres the servant, the intellect, and has forgotten the gift. And the way I would see it is that we are taught to ramp up our intellect to the decline or lack of access to our intuitive, creative, inspired mind that is where we're our true self. And really what we need to do is actually flip those over so that intuitive mind is what's there, that's our true self, and to be able to access and work with the intellect. So get the balance and access of both. So that's fundamentally what I bring to my clients. Because when we get into that the zone, if you like, of life, that's when we're able to achieve more than we ever imagined, even when we don't know how, when we're starting them. But also access the intellect when we need it. Relationships don't do well when people are in their intellect like this.
Yeah, I think, it's an interesting one because, of course, like if we had the whole world also functioning just on their intuition and not, having that reverence for the servant, if we use Einstein's terminology, then it may also cause harmful working environments, right? You wouldn't have people who would just follow the orders of the leader. You would have people always coming up with different ideas, and it would harm that aspect. I think many big organizations might see it that way, whereas smaller organizations, independent organizations, startups will view that as an asset, right? People are coming, they're contributing to the idea, they're contributing to the message, they're contributing to the collective growth of what we're working on. And I think that's exactly one of the things that a lot of people need to, flip that switch. And as you said, create that 180, right? Whereby we value creativity and we value intuition because everyone has them. We just need to create that space and that room for all of this stuff to flourish in people.
And what you just as an example, what you identified and showed there is how quick our mind is to make things up and make assumptions and beliefs about how things would be or where there's a problem there. And that, I'm not sure if you said that, but I'm not saying we spend more time in that intuitive state of mind. It's like being able to use the whole bandwidth. It's like we're just using part of the bandwidth and actually not the most powerful one. So it's how do we learn how to use the most appropriate? It's like if we're listening and have a commentary going on, an assessment analysis of what's being said and just trying to remember everything, we don't have access to that ability to really hear beyond the words of what's really being said. When people are just waiting they get the first bit and they want to reply to that, but the person says a lot more, and we're missing all that. Because then we've just got a dialogue going, when's he going to stop? When's he going to stop? I just want to say, I know what the answer is, which is not effective both on a one-on-one or an organization or for anybody. So it's how do we embrace, open up the valve? It's like a mind's like a valve. And if we're only on our intellect, it's only like this wide. It's how do we use the whole of the valve and access all of this? And that, I can't convince anybody of this, but I can give them the map on how it all works and then help them have experiences, or they have their own insights. So their experience will validate it. I say to people, I can't convince you of anything. I'm not even trying to. All I can do is help you. I'll share what I've learned, and I know it because it's my felt, experienced knowledge and experience. I know it's true in my bones. It's not theory, but that's for you to find out and have the fun of finding out, discovering the gift of everything we're capable of and who we really are without those limitations.
Right. And I think, one of the interesting questions I want to ask before I wrap up our show is, obviously you and I, we operate on the same mindset. I see things very similarly to you do. I understand the importance of, unlocking your full potential and the mind being the powerful tool in order to do that. But what do you say to all the skeptics out there who might be listening to this or might be listening to us and thinking these guys are just talking fluff?
I'd say if you have something, most people have something they would wish they could change in themselves or others, or would like to be able to do with greater ease, not as much hard work, maybe not go home so tired at the end of the day, be able to be with our partner or spouse when they're really upset without reacting, and just be able to hear them rather than getting defensive or trying to tell them what to do. How to really, I think not all, but many adults can really connect with children or their children. Well, that way of being with people, their little people, when we bring that to life, then, because everything is done through relationships, people have people that they don't know how to get on with, or they judge what they do or how they do it. But actually, if we can be more curious about that and more open to different ways, then things happen more gracefully. But most people don't even think about a coach until they've got something that's important to them and they don't know how to either get it or get over it or create something. And that's fine. There's a right time for anyone, and not everyone gets there. So when people are at that place, then they tend to be more receptive. And oftentimes, if they've tried everything or they've tried it other ways, it still hasn't worked, or it's only worked temporarily, then people are more open. And I say, don't believe me. You don't have to. But here's my experiences. I'm not just telling you theories here. And it doesn't matter what's happened to anything that's happened in the past. It's not relevant to right now. We all have access to our best self. And that's what I can help people understand how to access it. Is that worth experimenting with? We've spent 35, 45, 50, 65, how many years learning to be in our limited self? Would it be worth exploring 3 months, 6 months to actually uncover our best self, the best, easiest way to live and be more, the richer life experience and with less effort? And if then you're open to explore that, then it's possible. And you don't have to believe me ever. What will convince you is your own insights. I'm never going to try and convince anyone. It's impossible. But when we get these insights, then, I had several where they just changed my life. After I had that insight, there's no going back. And a lot of them through the understanding I share. And then, so I know it, and I can help people see that, especially in coaching, because often we can't see it ourselves. So when I can notice people saying things differently or reacting differently than before, or their state that they're in has shifted, then I can highlight, say, hey, what's going on? You mind if I ask you? You see what was going on at the beginning and what's happened here and what's happened in between. So I can help highlight, because oftentimes other people that know us will spot changes that we've unconsciously embodied and taken on, but we haven't noticed ourselves. Yeah. So either myself or those around and people over a bit of time. So I haven't had anybody I've worked with say that was a waste of time. No one. And what I found personally, and in business, big revenue gains, big, promotions, or, substantive benefits, not just their own personal experience. But once we get this understanding, then it's got an evergreen capacity in it, that no matter what level of understanding and awareness we have, there's always more. There's always more. And so those insights come for free, and they can get bigger and deeper and broader as we go on. So it's hard to be bored when we can understand life at this really fundamental, deep level, but without having to be aware. What am I thinking? What am I doing? Yeah, there's some telltale signs in our experience that guide us along the way.
And with that, I would like to wrap up my show. But before we go, Steve, if anybody would like to learn more about you and the work you do, where can they go to find out more information?
Well, they can find me on Facebook, just Steve Sharpley, or they can drop me an email at steve.sharpley@gmail.com. I'm happy to have a conversation or, see how I can help people engage with it. I'm in the process of working on an online program, but that's not ready yet.
Yes. Well, when that's ready, maybe we can do another podcast and come and talk about that. Once I've experienced it with you, then, happy to help you get it out there and make it reach more people, because I really also believe that, what you're doing and what the work of other coaches do is fundamental, and it is important to life, to fulfillment, to being your best self, unlocking your full potential, all of the benefits that come with it, right? And maybe that's my bias also with the psychology background, but I often notice that when my brain is functioning at its full capacity and I'm really focused on doing one thing and being really in the moment, that's when I'm my best self too. So I'm really happy we had this conversation, Steve, and I hope that our audience members also get to learn more about this field and also get to take away something as interesting as I have from this conversation. So before we wrap up, you can find Steve Sharpley on Facebook, as he mentioned, and on email. The email will also be in the description of the video so that you guys can contact him directly when you visit my channel.
So thank you for the invitation and thank you for the conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Have a good one.